Welcome to my NEA testing video. I'm going to start by running the simulator to verify that it starts as expected. I can see that the 6 theme selection buttons are correctly displayed. Now I'm going to test each of the buttons. I'll use my mouse to click the middle of the standard theme button to show that the continue button appears as it should. I will then click on the continue button to show that the continue button that appears after a theme selection behaves as expected. I will now click on the middle and edges of each of the 6 theme selection buttons in turn to show that they correctly change the color of the user interface. Now, I will click on several random, non-clickable areas of the screen background to show that the simulator ignores unexpected mouse clicks. I will now press on several random keyboard keys, and as you can see the simulator ignores these unexpected erroneous inputs. I'm now going to check the functionality of the on-screen continue button in more detail by clicking the middle of it after selecting each of the 6 themes in turn. I am now going to click on the edges of the Continue button after selecting the standard theme. After the Start screen appears, I'm going to press on a series of random keyboard keys. As you can see, the simulator successfully ignores these erroneous inputs. I am also going to click on several random areas of the Start screen with my mouse and verify that the simulator does not respond. From this point onwards in this testing video, I am going to test the functionality of the simulator with the standard theme only. I am now going to demonstrate the functionality of the Start button by clicking on the middle of it using the mouse. I will circle back to clicking on the edges of it shortly. I can see that, as expected, the main menu shows 6 button options. I will demonstrate the functionality of the first 5 of these buttons by clicking on the middle and edges of each of them using the mouse. I will make the functionality of the back button that I have already used extra clear by clicking on the edges of it using the mouse. As previously seen, it correctly navigates back to the main menu. I will now click on 7 other random areas of the background of the screen. The simulator does not respond. I will now press on several random keyboard keys. The simulator ignores this. I will click on the middle of the Exit button using the mouse. This causes the program to terminate. I will now verify that clicking on the edges of the Start button produces the expected change. I will also verify that clicking on the edges of the back button produces the expected change. Now to test the reaction mode in more detail. We have seen that the back button navigates back to the main menu when either the middle or the edges of it are clicked. I will now click on several random non-clickable areas of the screen background to verify that the simulator does not respond. I can see that the periodic table is displayed correctly with all of its intended accompanying features. I will click on several pairs of random available elements from each of the groups on the periodic table to verify that up to 2 available elements can be selected and are shown under the text description. I will verify that once 2 available elements have been selected, any further element selections are ignored. I will circle back to unavailable element selection in a minute. I will now demonstrate the functionality of the Clear Reactants button and show that it works as expected when either the middle or the edges of it are clicked. Let's circle back and check that when the user selects an unavailable element from the periodic table, this is ignored. I will now check the functionality of the Choose from Storage button, and show that when the middle or edges of it are clicked, it navigates to the storage unit. The next few objectives require some successful reactions to have occurred during the current runtime, so I will now pause to complete a selection of successful reactions in order to fill the storage unit and lab book. Let's take a closer look at the text description that appears when a single element reactant is selected. It should show the appropriate apparatus that should be used to transfer the reactant into the reaction vessel. I will now verify that the automatically selected transfer apparatus is correct for pairs of elements and for compound selections. Let's continue with a more detailed evaluation of the text description shown for selected reactants. I will check that this text description lists the reactants' names and that it is adjusted when temperature and pressure conditions change. I will then check that the temperature and pressure condition buttons are present and test their behavior by clicking on the middle and edges of each button. Lastly, I will check that changing the conditions correctly affects the results of the reaction where appropriate. I will test this using the reactions written. I will now confirm that the holding device apparatus buttons are correctly displayed, and I will test their functionality by clicking on the middle and edges of each button and verifying that the description text and reaction animation both change accordingly. I will then confirm that the solvent buttons are correctly displayed. I will test the functionality of each button shortly. I will now test that the water solvent button has the correct effect on the description text and the outcome that is shown in the reaction result animation, when both the middle and edges of it are clicked. I will check that the same is true for the ethanol solvent button. I will then verify that the assistant bot is displayed correctly, and check its functionality. I will firstly demonstrate that the automatic text hints and safety advice displayed by the assistant bot change dynamically when a variety of reactants and conditions are chosen. I will then test the behavior of the search bar and enter button to verify that queries can be correctly submitted by the user. Lastly, I will check that the assistant bot responds appropriately when the user submits a text query. I will now test as wide a range of expected assistant bot queries as possible, and show that for each of them relevant information is extracted from the database and displayed to the user in the expected format. I will also show that for a wide range of unexpected queries for which the database has no relevant information, the assistant bot still displays the expected useful information to aid the user's learning. Lastly, I will formally test the functionality of the React button. Although I have used it frequently throughout this video, I will confirm that it is displayed correctly, responds to clicks on its middle and edges, and only navigates to the reaction result screen if at least one valid reactant selection has been made. I will now test the reaction result animation screen more extensively by verifying that all of the expected behavior that is listed occurs. I will do this for a large random selection of 10 reactions. I have already demonstrated that the back button of the reaction result screen behaves as expected when its middle and edges are clicked. I will now test that the store button behaves as expected, correctly adding compounds to containers in the storage unit. I have already looked at some unsuccessful reactions, but I will now formally confirm that these also behave as expected. I will now move on to testing the functionality of the quiz mode. I have already demonstrated that the quiz main menu button behaves as expected. I will now show that when it is clicked, the username input screen is displayed correctly and behaves as expected. I will show that the input of valid character keys is allowed, and invalid keyboard keys are ignored. I will also verify that after the username is confirmed, the quiz countdown screen appears as expected and the subsequent quiz question screen displays the correct features. On each displayed screen, I will click on random areas of the background to verify that the simulator does not respond. I will now check that each of the features of the quiz question screen behave as expected, in accordance with the list of conditions shown. I will verify that the progress graph changes dynamically with both correct and incorrect answers to quiz questions, and that once 10 questions have been attempted, a new quiz results screen appears. I will check that for a random sample of 9 different username and quiz performance combinations, the quiz result screen displays the correct listed features. I will also click on 7 random areas of the non-clickable screen background to verify that the simulator ignores this. I will now move on to testing the functionality of the lab book. I will verify that for a random sample of 10 successful reactions, the lab book correctly displays corresponding entries and the pagination works as expected. I will now move on to testing the functionality of the storage unit. I will demonstrate that all 5 containers are empty at the beginning of a runtime, and fill with the compound formed in a successful reaction each time the user clicks Store. I will verify that all occupied containers are correctly labeled, and I will check that the compounds they contain are selected as expected when the middle or edges of them are clicked. I will verify that the Clear Storage button behaves as expected when the middle or edges of it are clicked. I will now check that the info screen displays all of the expected information. I will then verify that the displayed cards turn over as expected when the middle or edges of them are clicked. I am already aware of a slight flaw in the display of the image icons, but this is non-functional and does not concern me. I will then confirm that the user is able to scroll using their mouse in order to view different parts of the displayed text, and I will verify that this scrolling only works correctly within the bounds of the displayed text, and only if the mouse is located on the screen when the user scrolls. I will confirm that when the keyboard keys are pressed, the simulator ignores this.